Last week on Overtime.
So what do you think is the overall agenda for why they try to, I guess, erase so much African history, Western African history away? Like, what's the big secret?
And that's a difficult thing to answer, what they really want, but I definitely think it's a mixed direction of the information. So the way that we learn it here in the West is right off the bat, we learn the Greek interpretations of all the names of all these, net. So, and again, they never used the words gods to describe them. They were netters, right? They were just natural occurring spirits that were here to help us. I think there is an access to greater knowledge that for some reason people do want to control. And the fact that we haven't been able to access it or didn't know how to read it worked, against us because we've, kind of been turned out of that. So I think there's some knowledge there about who we are, what ultimately happens to you, in your afterlife. I think those things are written down there.
Good.
One of the first things I do in the book is bring the North African belief systems and the West African belief systems together, because I don't think that they're far apart. I think they're very similar, right? What North Africans or Egyptians said was Ma'at or balance. West Africans were talking about Ifa, right? It's exactly the same thing. They have a list of like things that you're supposed to live by, which is very similar to the 42 laws of Ma'at. So so that's the first thing I want to uncover is I want to knock the dust off of separating out these belief systems in Africa. They all use different, quote unquote gods to tell their individual stories and their languages. But I think repetitively, they were saying a lot of the same things over and over again, just telling them in different forms.
These are alien beings or did we come from alien beings or, you know what I'm saying?
I think they are definitively alien beings under every way that I would define an alien. You came from there. You told me your house was at Sirius, and that star system there, and now we're here. So cut and dry to me, that's an alien. I would say the same thing for Norse beliefs. When people talk about Odin, they talk about, I would say exactly the same thing. Whether we came from here or not, I think is debatable. Because I've heard a lot of black people who old myths say that we did not come from here. We didn't originate here. We came from somewhere else and we were seeded here.
Australian Aboriginals still say that today.
Yeah, so so that's something I'm still kind of hanging on to, what I actually believe in that regard. But I definitely believe when we're talking about them, we are talking about aliens.
I guess they call them the Anunnaki gods, or would you think they're the same as the Egyptians?
No,
not at all.
I don't think so.
Maybe some of the hidden history or revised history has to do something with melanated people or black people in Americas prior to,
yes,
the history books. Okay.
Yeah, 100%. Now, because one of the big things is, here's one thing that we almost has been wiped out of history is Africans who built boats and went out into the sea.
Yeah, right? I was going to actually talk
about Africans spreading out. First of all, there is no such thing as the Middle East. I don't even know where that came from, where they came up with that phrase, the Middle East, because the Middle East is still Africa.
Exactly.
Right? It's a gap between, and you look at it and you're like, okay, well, they can walk over there, right? Literally. And that
pyramids over there, don't they, in China?
Yeah. A lot you can't even research.
Dude, there's a crazy amount of pyramids all over the world. Like you go into Southeast Asia,
hundreds,
Thailand, even in Manila, there are pyramids there. There's pyramids in South America. We've seen all that, and we know that one of the best myths out of Egypt or Kemet was that Asar came and taught people how to build pyramids, and that's what the myth is. That's what he was doing around the world, was spreading that knowledge of how to build pyramids, how to grow agriculture. So I
heard about the using sound waves to actually move stone.
I heard that. Yeah, that's something that I've heard that theory as well. And these were people who the concept of vibration was very important. Yeah. So dark psychology to me, like Hitler tapped into it, Mussolini tapped into it. There's a lot. Jim Jones tapped into it. Like they understood manipulation.
What's the guy
Jim
for
Jones.
Scientology? He definitely probably used that.
Oh, L. Ron Hubbard.
L. Ron
Yeah.
Hubbard, yeah.
L. Ron Hubbard was a master of that.
Yeah.
And he was on some real dark stuff. I mean, like
Yeah.
everything that they were about was about ultimately controlling people. And the scary stuff about it is that we're all susceptible to it. Everybody has blind spots.
That ties into Thoth, because I know that from what I read, he's the inventor of mathematics. Pretty much he brought science down. Pretty much the basis of everything that we pretty much learned, the math, science, astrology, all of those things. So is he tied to? I guess from all the way to the beginning, is his legacy or his influence? Does it tie all the way back to the beginning?
All the way back to the beginning. Mm-hmm. All the way back. The way I understand the myth, obviously Atum was, Apep and Atum were created first, chaos and order. And
time. Do you think that even right now he may be out here somewhere, like in a different, I guess a different form and
Avatar.
Avatar. Or do you think it has to be like specific times in history where it's like, all right, now it's my time to appear. They need my knowledge. You know what I mean? If that makes sense.
Because we're lacking right now.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think yeah, I mean, I think knowledge from snakes. That it became like we still look at our medical system, right? And we still see snake symbolism. So at some point, obviously that coming from Imhotep, right? That this is association of learning higher knowledge from snakes existed in Egypt. It existed in Mesopotamia, Indus Valley, and then at some point, modern belief systems came and directly attacked that in the first story. I mean, when we go to Christian beliefs, the first story out of that book in Genesis, or one of the early stories, is about don't talk to snakes.
Yep.
Don't listen to snakes, right? Yep. Don't take knowledge from people that we've been taking knowledge from for a long time.
Yep.
And that's, that's supposedly the Kundalini, and that's, the sequences in your DNA also.
So we've had that conversation on this podcast before, where in some movies the hero is actually trying to preserve a civilization that's not natural. The villain is actually trying to destroy this civilization because it's it's a toxic civilization to the planet. So you're watching this and you're like, oh, hero, save it, but the hero is actually trying to preserve something that's actually bad. Do you see what I'm saying? And you the entire time you're watching the movie, you're actually rooting for the person to preserve a evil society.
Like space travel, I think it's like more Stargate type.
That's what I always assumed that the pyramid structures were ultimately for. That when they were built and they were covered and they had the gold, gold to me, gold for these advanced civilizations was not about something that looks good that you wear. Right. It was about transferring energy, right? Because it's the most efficient way to transfer energy. So when you have those gold caps on those pyramid temples set where they were specifically positioned, they were all about drawing in the energy for probably something like a gate, which we assume would take a lot of energy in order to do that.
It was a pyramid. There's a few pyramid shapes on, the surface of Mars, allegedly. Yeah. And one of them is a 5-sided pyramid. And I didn't know until as of late, one of the pyramids, in Egypt, the Great Pyramid.
Great one.
When it does shine a certain way, it is a 5-sided pyramid.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's that's pretty much a bombshell. And we had lots of structures, like you said. There are lots of older structures that were as they were kind of developing, building the pyramid structures all over the world. And so I think they were put at specifically key places for that idea that you would be able to bring back.
So I think like that's not really obtainable. It's more so the Stargate.
It's ridiculous.
Angle.
You can't get into a ship and fly to anywhere. It's too far. So we also know that the universe is expanding, right? So it's actually everything's actually getting further apart.
Yeah,
exactly. You're gonna tell me, unless you
that's a good ass point.
Look, the fantasy that we could break the speed of light. Okay, if we could break the speed of light, all right, I believe you. I believe you. Otherwise, it's hundreds of thousands of years to the next closest star system.
Moses, he came to Kemet to study the Kemetic ways.
Yes.
Am I right?
Yes.
And then he committed murder and he left Kemet, correct?
Yes.
And then once he fled Kemet, he then needed people to follow him, and then that's when he created his stories of the Ten Commandments. Correct? That's correct, right?
That's very true. Yep.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Which
brother right
has
there.
very odd parallels to.
I'm learning.
Oh man, I think that certain people realize that when you have that exceptional person that's supposed to lead a civilization or rise up a group of people, if you can take those away, you can stunt a civilization. Especially, no, I'll look at it and we say that because of colonization, we know that Africans endured a lot of the same stuff that we did. So if you can be smart about taking away that one leader per generation, one, you get a Dr. King, you get a Malcolm X, you get because we know those people don't come around all the time, right? And then who was it? The director of the FBI said there will not be another Black Messiah unless we create it. I do believe 100% there is levels that we can manifest, that we can make things happen. I mean, that's what the mythologies tell us from the earliest beginnings, that there was speech and thought that went together to do this creation. So I think that what they were doing was sharing that knowledge. I think for Aleister Crowley, because I know he wrote some other kind of seemingly kind of nefarious books as well, but I think he overall had a good understanding of what that concept was. Atlantic Ocean, right? We can reasonably make assumptions to where Atlantis was. Now we've got a new movie. When the Black Panther movie comes out, his nemesis in this will be Prince Namor of Atlantis. Who some would make an argument that Prince Namor is a reference to Narmer, who was the Nasut. I hate to point the finger, but I'm going to point the finger a little bit. I think that what we see from Abrahamic belief systems has also been altered. I don't think that it's a coincidence that the seat of Western power has always kind of been around those beliefs. I think even we go back to Rome, when Rome changed hands, Rome became under the influence of Abrahamic belief system. It wasn't a coincidence that at that time Rome had control of the world. And then we can kind of see where the printing press came from, and then the explosion or proliferation of religions around the world.
You ever heard of the Council of Nicaea?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, they sat down and they had plans on what they were going to do with their influences around the world. And it 100% happened. And then that same religions were used once you had conquered those people. Now you start slipping this religion in this altered form that it existed.
Flat Earth or
not
sphere.
even that. Like, what do you make of this? Because like we watch so many movies of like multiverses or dimensions and you know what I'm saying, stuff like this. Like, what do you make of this Earth? Like how can you?
The best thing I could say is that, you know, I think that there's this is just one of the transitions that we go through, this like form of existence. It's probably the most basic, right? I hope that doesn't get any lower than this, right? I kind of think that that's what it is. I think the Earth ultimately is this great place that no matter what we do to the Earth is going to be all right, right? I think it has the power to regenerate. It'll survive us. It's not worrying about us.
The density, the faster it goes, the lighter it gets, the slower it goes, the thicker the density is. So if you raise your vibration up, you pretty much, because we're light beings, so eventually you become enlightened when you become light. So it's like that's pretty much what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, 100%. Looking at that, and I started looking at like the belief systems about transition and change, and it seemed like if you relate the two, coming from a single source, ultimately being expanded out, going through various changes, and ultimately everyone's goal is to be unified, and that's where you have black holes and that can. So we go through periods of expansion and contraction, and that's all ultimately that the universe is doing. So us individually, you know, I'm still retaining myself, but I'm bringing back whatever, you know, when I come back to the source and I'm back, we're sharing all this knowledge from all these individual experiences. So it makes me think of the early mythology of Atum, where he sends his children out, Shu and Tefnut, out into the universe so far that he couldn't find him. He has to send his eye out to get him. They seem like those particles of light that were going out and kind of creating the universe, which is still expanding. But eventually, our star is going to run out of hydrogen, it's going to run out of helium, and it's going to contract. And I think that's the last part of the process, is that we all have these experiences, but you're all ultimately going to come back to that one singularity.